This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney, Sewell. Today, we've packed a number of shows together to give you some highlights. I know you're going to enjoy the show. Thank you for being with us today.
Today, we have an amazing guest, very special guest. I can't believe I've not had this guest on the show before the 1000th show, but I'm thankful that this guest has known me through every show and stood behind me for every show and every step of the process of getting to where we're at today. Her name is Chelsea Sewell. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Thanks for having me, Whitney.
Chelsea is my amazing bride, and there's no intro that could do her justice. We're going to get into that today, actually. I was surprised. I put a post on social media a few weeks back and asked about what should we do for the 1000th show, and many people mentioned, us talking about our journey. And I thought, well, there's no better person that could help me talk about our journey than my bride. So I'm excited about this show, and we were just praying about it before we even got started, just that it encourages you, the listener, and that it's beneficial. I think it will be, just hearing our story and really some real struggles that it took to get to where we're at today. And I'm looking forward, even personally, hearing more of Chelsea's side of the story. So, well, let's jump in, and it goes way back. How far do you want to go back, Chelsea?
I guess we should start at the beginning.
So, like 2000 and what? We give a slight timeline. We may not remember every date to put with it, but our investment journey began in 2009. But let's go right before that, though, because there's some struggles there that I think could be very beneficial to the listeners also. And let's see, or let's even go back a little further. So I'd received no financial instruction really growing up, no like real training, no thinking about investing or retirement or how to do those things. I was not raised around people who thought about really investing. They didn't have those options, I guess I could say. And what would you say about yourself, Chelsea?
Yeah. I would say I grew up in a family where you worked hard to go to school and do well, and just looking to college, that was just a guarantee, not an option, that you were going to do that and get a job and just work hard your whole life, and kind of at a job and put in your time and get good health insurance, and just those kind of things were the priority.
I think I had amazing support, especially from most of my family, but I would have to highlight my mother, and just amazing support behind anything I decided to do, no matter how crazy it sounded.
And still to today, she does the same thing.
Yes, she's extremely supportive. Very grateful for that support, and during many crazy ideas. But anyway, but after Chelsea and I got married, you were given the book, the Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, and that may have even been, was it before we were married? Or
mm-hmm. Yep, we were engaged, I think.
We were engaged, and we read that book, and it made a lot of sense, I think, to both of us. We're like, okay, well, a debt doesn't seem to make as much sense, and we should plan a little bit. And so we did. We started planning, and thankfully we started paying off student debt as fast as possible. And we didn't have, we were so big on not having car loans or any kind of debt. I'm so thankful that the Lord brought that into our life so we could think about that from the beginning and not acquire lots of bad debt. And so But also during that time, I was a police officer. I was working. Most of the listeners have probably heard most of that part of that story anyway. But I was working for Kentucky State Police, and I loved working the road as a police officer. Chelsea's shaking her head and smiling.
But, you did love it.
But it just wasn't what was best, right? We were living in a little apartment close to Frankfort, Kentucky, and then we decided to move back closer to family, and we did. We got to South Central Kentucky, and we bought a house, and I was working the worst schedule, nights and weekends a lot, or all the overtime that I could. A police salary was quite small, and so looking for all the overtime, trying to remodel at night or work on the remodels, those things. Eventually, though, Chelsea and I realized we were just passing each other in the hallway, and it just was not what was best. And also, just started realizing that guys were retiring, making 30, 35,000, 40,000 at times, even after working 25, 30 years. And it was obvious that this was not what was best for our family long term. We wanted Chelsea to be able to stay at home when we had children, and, thinking that, okay, there's really, no matter how much overtime I work, even having to work that many hours, it's going to be hard to break 40, 45,000 ever. And, like just a couple years into that career at this point, it's like, okay, that is pretty discouraging. And I hate it for those guys and gals who are serving in that way. I'm so thankful for them. But I knew I had to make a change. And I didn't know what that would be. I didn't have any college. I didn't go to college. And so I felt pretty limited. And so I started looking for, actually, Chelsea and I started praying, right? Lord, what can I even do? I mean, I felt so limited at that time. What can I do that would provide more for our family long term, even right now? And the Lord provided many things. At this time, though, I learned about real estate. I don't remember what first, brought that into my mind or thoughts, but I know read Rich Dad Poor Dad amongst other things, which most of you have heard about. Chelsea, what do you remember about that? I mean, do you remember when we first decided to buy those or get into rentals, or when I first brought that up? Anything about that?
Yeah, so I think I can say this about several things in our journey, that I think we were just naive enough to do it, and maybe ignorant enough to kind of jump in, and then the mercy of God just follows us and is kind during those blunders sometimes. But so, yeah, I remember it just being a learning process, that we were trying to figure out, okay, how particular are we going to be about tenants and just our expectations, and kind of trying to figure out those things. I remember, and I think, I'm not sure you still have it on your phone, but we would get calls, of course, as any landlord, in the middle of the night, and my toilet's running, or things like that. And he still has a call on his, or a voicemail on his phone.
Almost positive I still have it.
Yeah, that's a recording. And when we play it, we just remember, that God's been with us, and just helps us to thank him for all his kindness and his nearness during that time. And I do remember it just being very stressful, because even though we didn't have any children at the time, we're both working jobs, we're both working different schedules, and it's just, where is the time going to come from to be able to manage these units? And it was just 6, but it's still, just when someone moves out, all the work that you have to do to get it ready for the next one and find a good new tenant and that kind of thing. And all the things we were reading were really talking about, how to expect more and, get good tenants and things like that. So
it was a Class C property. I don't know if I've shared that much, but it wasn't probably the best part of town. And so, like Chelsea mentioned, a tenant would move out, and it's quite the disaster. So it was just so discouraging every time, the way, the shape that the unit would be left in, and the work required to get it back in shape, to get it re-rented. And we learned a lot the hard way. I do call it our university. It was quite the process. We did learn a lot, all those things, and we're probably much stronger today because of it. But that was probably the biggest loss. Difficult times, no doubt about it. Just got into real estate. And did you have anything else about those units or just that time period you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think it's probably important to note that we weren't Christians then. And so I think that made that time, more difficult. We just didn't know what we were doing in pretty much any kind of adventure that we were taking on, and we weren't Christians. I just remember, some 2x4s being launched through the backyard, or I would just come home and there would just be tools all over the living room, and I would just cry, and I would think, okay, we can do it. It won't be forever. And, I would wash dishes in the bathtub because there was no sink or countertops or things like that yet.
For months.
Yeah, for a long time. But I think on this side of it, it's clear to see that all of those things were important parts of the story, and God can be trusted during all those difficulties. And then, shortly after that time, we were saved. And so that was a real turning point for our marriage, our business, just, our life in general.
So we moved forward from there. We were praying for the Lord to provide some other way for more income, another career for me. Was not sure what that was going to be. Had no idea. Again, I felt almost kind of helpless about it because I wasn't sure what else I was qualified to do with no college. Right, no college. Wasn't sure what that was going to be, but I met a guy at a scale facility one day. Like you see the trucks.
Wait.
What?
So we were praying, and you said out loud, "What else am I going to do?" And we just prayed, and we were just thinking, like, what else are you going to do? And so he was there at the scale house the day that this guy came in, and he waited until everybody else had left the scale house that day and stayed late with this guy. And after everyone had left, he came up to him and said, "Okay, tell me what you do. Talk to me about this." And it was a divine appointment. You guys just were at the same place at the right time.
No doubt about it. Divine appointment. The Lord definitely worked these things out. Never saw this guy before in my life. He was in a different uniform, but he was at the scale facility doing inspections on trucks. And I thought, what does he do? Who is he? And like Chelsea said, I waited till all the other officers left so I could talk to him and learn more about him. Well, that individual, Joe Martinez, in case he's listening, thank you. But he helped me through the entire process of getting hired as a federal agent. And that was just an extreme blessing. It is not easy to get hired with the federal government, especially as an agent. And he helped me. Chelsea and I, here's another testimony to her. But I mean, she was willing to move to Montana. We applied in many different states and were willing to move anywhere, almost anywhere in the country to make it happen. It was going to more than double my income and even room for more growth in income, better retirement, better benefits, better hours, like normal working hours, which we were really looking forward to at this point. So it was such a blessing. It was a long process. I did get hired. There's so many things about that story that is how the Lord blessed it. And we can even see it now, in such big ways of how the Lord used that to bring us to Roanoke, Virginia. We're so thankful that we are where we're at for many reasons.
Yes.
But the Lord, just that divine appointment, it was so important. We did still have the apartments at this time, those 6 units. We were still in the middle of the house remodel. Met this guy, started applying to become a federal agent. And we thought that was, it was so amazing, just the timing. But we did. Do you have any part of that, any of that you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, so I think it just really was the goals for our family that were driving all of that as well. So there was just a real value of that for our family, and a value in Whitney's heart of that as well, for me to be at home. And so I think that was driving a lot of that motivation to have more income, just so that I could be working at home when we had children. And so I think that was in the forefront of our minds for that.
For sure. That was definitely the motivation. I was federal agent for, 9 years roughly. And during that time, we didn't really buy and sell much real estate. We still owned those triplexes in Kentucky for the first year.
Traveling back and forth on the weekends when someone would move out, or bringing the washing machine from Roanoke all the way back to the apartments, like in a 7-hour drive, and putting one in and coming back. And
just because of the time restraints, I would buy appliances in Virginia and then haul them all the way to Kentucky and put them in on the weekend and come back. It was crazy. It was crazy, but it's what we could do at the time. I think still it was just kind of the mentality, just let's get it done. That's what we have to do at the moment. Let's just go do it. And so that's what we did. Mm-hmm. We finally were able to sell those units and move on from that. How we got back in real estate after that, I have no idea. Why Chelsea agreed to get back into real estate, I have no idea. I had a passion of also training horses since I was a little boy. Always wanted to ride and train, and just that dream of being a cowboy, I think. But finally we were out on a big farm, and I was riding, started training a lot. And I was still federal agent full time, but I started promoting somewhat of a horse training business and branding myself and doing clinics and traveling some and teaching lots of people horsemanship skills, selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. It just really, I really loved, training, and I would do it in the rain. I would do it in the cold. I would do it at midnight in January. It was just, what was it you said one time? You're either insane or you're really passionate about it. Something I can't remember now.
Yeah. That's just the way you do everything, though.
It started to grow. I was selling, like I said, horses for more money than I ever imagined. And really, riding, doing things that I dreamed about, since I was little. And finally, though, it was a few years of this, just working more than 2 full-time jobs. I would come home again, Chelsea's doing everything in the home.
And we have 2 children. By that time, when he started riding was when we brought our first child home through adoption. And then by the time we got to the point that you're talking about a few years later, we had a second son through adoption as well. So, but they were both very, very little.
Still federal agent. I was working, I would come home and I would change clothes, run out, load the horses, Superman. Go to the arena, ride, give lessons, ride numerous horses and give lessons, come home, 11, 12 o'clock at night, shower, bed, up early, federal agent, come home, same thing, over and over and over and over. Finally, you and I were at the beach one fall. And I remember I was actually reading the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and that probably influenced this quite a bit. But Chelsea and I were, I just remember us reflecting really on what our life looked like and what we wanted it to look like, what we envisioned, I think, 3 years from then. Like, what is it? Is it really going to look like this? Can we keep this up, or is it even worth it? I was just missing all the time with her and the boys, and something had to change. We knew that the horse training was never going to be passive. We knew that I could probably make a lot of money doing it, but it was still, were we comfortable me quitting the federal agent position? That position, it seemed secure, right? That JOB, it was a better JOB than I had ever imagined, right? No college, like I talked about. It was such a blessing, making more money at that time than I ever imagined making with no college degree. I was just really stuck on that, right? Well, what can I do? Because since I don't have this piece of paper from university, how can I make any more money than being a police officer? So now trying to make more money in training horses and being a federal agent, but we knew it was never going to be passive. We knew that to build wealth, it just was going to be nearly impossible. I was always going to have to be the one training the horses and riding and working many, many, many hours. So there was some big decisions that really we made almost instantly when I look back. I mean, it seems like that's the way we do things. We're like, no, this is like the Lord just gives us both peace about it, and we just move forward in a big way. And we did at this point. We at this point too, we had the farm that we had always dreamed of. We'd had the house and acreage, and we loved our place. But we knew to make this happen, and we knew to be able to pursue commercial real estate. So I knew real estate could build wealth, right? I knew so many people had built wealth in real estate, and so we knew that was the path that we should probably commit all our attention to. And we decided to sell the farm. You want to add anything?
Yeah. So it was just the point kind of that we knew there needed to be a change, and it required a big commitment on our part. Things like this don't happen by stepping into it. You really have to jump all in. And hope I don't get ahead of us, but I remember selling the farm, committing to that. And then there were other changes happening as well. And so we had adopted 2 children at the time, and we were considering a third adoption. And so that was something we had talked about, but that was really growing in my heart. And again, we're both really busy at this time, and we're not doing a lot of probably communicating that we should have. And so he finds out about a mentorship program, and we're still at the farm. But he finds out about this mentorship program, and he's, of course, in his mind, he's like, all right, how do I make this happen? And he's just like, whatever I need to do to make it happen, that's what I'm going to do. And so he's learning about this, and he finds out about this mentorship program. And I'm thinking about adoption. And so those things are 2 big financial investments that in my mind weren't maybe going to happen at the same time. And so when he told me about that, I think I just kind of lost it and cried a little bit and was just thinking, how are we ever going to do, all of that at the same time? And so I just remember just from then on and selling the house, just thinking we jumped into it. We knew we were going to, but just, I think as we sold the farm and drove away that day,
we were both crying,
looking in the rearview mirror. We were driving separately, and there was this song playing in the car, and it's called Red Sea Road by Ellie Holcomb. And when you can't see the way, he will carve a way. And so I was just thinking about, I feel like we're just stepping out here, and what do we just do? Just kind of that heart behind it. So that was kind of the feeling I think we left with at that time. But God gave us faith for it. We knew it was what we were supposed to do. We just knew that this is going to be harder maybe than we originally thought when we jumped in. So
we had no idea how difficult it was going to be. We did. We sold the farm. And as crazy as that is, I mean, this was the fall. It's probably the end of
17.
August and beginning of September. We decided to sell. By Christmas, I mean, we closed on the house. This is how crazy I like to do things. And Chelsea, some reason, continues to support me. We sold the house between Christmas and New Year's, and the farm. And we couldn't find, I was trying to buy a little house in town somewhere. we were trying to minimize our expenses as much as possible so we could afford to adopt and afford a mentorship program. And we had never spent this kind of money before. We'd never made any money really to speak of, I mean, other than just the normal JOB. And, you know, even thinking my mentorship program at that time, which I had done lots of research on, I've done numerous shows on that. And so we won't go into all that now, but I think it was $12,500. And it was, man, that seemed like such a big expense to us. I mean, thinking that we're pursuing our third adoption,
which costs we were just thinking probably 50 or 60,000 we were thinking about for that, which we didn't, have that saved up somewhere. But we'd seen God provide for the other two. And so we knew that, if he calls you to something, he also equips you and provides for that. So we had faith for that, but at the same time, praying about it.
Yes. So that was a massive commitment for us. It seemed, and so when I told Chelsea that, just so you can imagine, she's thinking we're going to pursue another adoption. Well, here's another at least 50 grand. We don't even know where that's going to come from, but what little we do have saved up, really, Whitney, you're planning to go spend $12,500 on some real estate mentorship. But now you can understand why we share the story about the triplexes and the heartaches there, the learning lessons, how the difficulties, and still Chelsea's behind me, even pursuing this new venture in commercial real estate. So if you can just think about that a moment, everything that had happened now I've decided or pushed her to sell the farm. And we're in it 100% together, but still, that's a lot to ask, I think, of any bride, any spouse. And she was behind it 100%. Obviously, selling the place. We found a place to rent last minute. It was horrible. It's just, oh my goodness. We did. We found a place to rent. The Lord provided a great place for us for 6 months. We signed a 6-month lease. So if you remember all these moves, we moved to this house. We've moved more than most folks in the last few years, but we moved to this house, couldn't find a place to buy that fast. We rented a house for 6 months. During this time is when I was diving in with my mentor, learning the real estate syndication business, commercial real estate. And we were just getting adjusted to the new normal. I think I was still a federal agent and trying to do all the real estate stuff or get it started, learning. 6 months go by and we did find a house, and the Lord provided a great little house in a different part of town, and we bought it, moved again, and during this, go ahead.
3 moves, right? We rented a big farm, then we moved we wanted to buy a place, have our own. So we moved to that farm, and then we rented 6 months. And then now we're here at the little house in town, trying to minimize our expenses and that kind of thing.
Right. And at this house is where the podcast was birthed and just the business was really born. But that's really where the struggles, the hard times began.
That's where we dug in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.